Okay, I have unmuted myself. I have that facility, but just to say, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, we start our day two of the faculty retreat. We had a small glitch for those of you perhaps that don't know. We have now some 192 participants. Before I proceed further, I would like to invite Suleiman, the Zoom host, to run us through our behavior expectations. But I think today he has got some housekeeping stuff as well to run through you. So after we are done with him, I would like to invite Dr. Douglas Trimble to start the day for us, and then I will proceed further. Ji, Suleiman.
Good morning, everyone. Just to mention few important points before we start the day two of the faculty retreat, you have to rename yourself according to this format and by following this step. We need both the department name and the full name so that we do not make a mistake in recording your CPDRs. If you are facing a bandwidth issue, please keep your video turned off. We will keep you all muted during the session, but if you have a question, please raise your hand or mention it in the chat box. If allowed to speak, host will ask you to unmute yourself. You will get a notification on your screen to unmute. Please proceed accordingly. While speaking, please be mindful of the time, keep your comments brief and to the point, and be respectful of others' opinions. All faculty retreat sessions will be recorded. We do not have an editing facility at CLT, so the recordings will not be readily available as we have to get them edited from somewhere else. So you will get the recordings by Monday. And one more thing, we have asked all the facilitators to share their PowerPoints with us. Some of the facilitators have still not done so. You are requested to share your PowerPoints with us so that we can share the resources with all the participants. Thank you.
Suleiman, you will have to unmute Dr. Trimble, so I can request him to say a few words before the session starts. Dr. Trimble?
Good morning. I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended and participated yesterday. I think that it was an excellent session. I think that there was much that was learned. It was very helpful. Thank you, Dr. Roxana, for all that you have done to prepare yesterday and to prepare for today. I appreciate the well wishes that I received yesterday. I just wanted to let you know that I have asthma and I'm under doctor's care for that. And so I am actively seeking medical attention for this. So thank you for all the well wishes that I received yesterday. Looking forward to today. Thank you for your patience as we're getting started. Back to you, Dr. Roxana.
Thank you, Dr. Trimble. It's do get well. There's a lot happening on campus and fast forward, and it's just not the. I hope you will feel upset for not being there, So, but asthma, I think, is something to do with air quality, and it should sort of help you if the quality is better inside the house. Going on to the schedule for the day, I'll quickly walk you through what to expect today. You must have seen, we will have a small clip, a video clip. I will walk through a recap of what we did yesterday and what it means again for us. And then we'll move on to a live demo of how to, when you go into a classroom, then how are you going to, talk to the in-person students, but also live stream or Zoom or Skype or MS Teams with online students. Of course, assessments, we have never had enough of that. And then we'll break out for a small break like yesterday. We have our own stars, artists actually, performing artists at the campus. So we have located some, and Aisha will talk to us about how to ground ourselves in these times of turbulence. And then we'll have some policies that are new and how to keep ourselves and our students safe on campus. And of course, the academic leadership, the deans will talk about their plans. And then we'll hear some faculty voices who will talk about their experience. So we do have a special message for all of you who would like to say something. Please keep it under a minute, but please do write in the chat to Suleiman to unmute you ahead of time so that we do not lose time while we are at it. So Suleiman, over to you. Can you sort of put on the video clip from your end?
Sure, ma'am.
Morning, parents. I'm your local school administrator here. Just wanted to thank you so much for taking those 72 surveys this past summer. So helpful. And at the time, we were able to offer you 3 different models. We were able to offer you a face-to-face, hybrid, and completely virtual option. I will say at this time, though, since our communication last, most of the teachers in the virtual program have retired or resigned to move on to more burgeoning and safe careers with Grubhub, Instacart, and skydiving instruction. So I do want to thank you. Your feedback was so valuable. We were able to grab all that data and throw it away and just come up with another model that no one had ever mentioned before. And we're going to move forward with that one. And I'm excited to explain it. We call it our simple hybrid model, and I think you'll see why in just a second. So now each student has been assigned a cohort color, yellow or blue, very simple, every class, divided in half. Half are yellow, half are blue, but here's the kicker. You want to keep this in mind. These cohort colors may change with the weather or season, so we're starting right now with yellow and blue. They may change to pumpkin spice latte and salted caramel once we get into the fall. Now, one cohort will attend on Mondays and Wednesdays and every other Friday. The other cohort attends on Tuesdays and alternate Thursdays, but only during months that end in the letter R. So you're going to want to pay attention to those month names. All right, now, if it's raining and over 80 degrees, all classes will start 1 hour later. So you're going to want to take that temperature and check that sky just so you know when we're starting. Now, on opposite days, those students at home that are watching from home will watch in their pajamas via Zoom or Google while they follow along with instruction or make TikTok videos. Now, the duration of classes. Each class is 28 minutes long, unless Zoom doesn't work. Students, let's move on to lunch. Students will go home for lunch. This is important. A lot of parents were concerned. We don't give a shit what you feed them, all right? But just make sure they're plopped in front of that computer at 12:48 so we can get back to work. Now, here's another important note. Afternoon classes are not 28 minutes long. They are only 23 minutes long, and that is for no reason whatsoever. So make sure that they are available, and there is an intermission during 6th period for everyone to go outside and scream their head off. We thought that would be important to add. Now, art and music will be taught on days divisible by 3, all right? So you're going to need to do some math for these extra classes, and all sports practices will continue. We are dedicated to our sports programs. The only thing is you'll be doing them from your living room with your own equipment and not on Zoom. But we are dedicated to keeping these sports programs going, so we're happy to be able to offer that. Now, we are excited to have these kids back at school and to give them the sense of normalcy that these kids deserve. So we are coming back to school. We are going to band together as a community, and we are going to take the temperature of kids rectally when it's medically necessary or if someone sneezes. So we are prepared on all fronts to be able to service your children. We just want to listen, thank all of our teachers, but we're proud of what we put together in the Simple Hybrid Plan, and we look forward to having these kids back to school very soon.
Okay, I do not know. Some people wrote in the clip that they were having a problem to the sound. Is that so? Did you have a problem while you were listening to the video? I think some of you did say that you had a problem. So anyway, but it was a fun video. And can you see my screen? Is it visible? Okay. So what it was just meant to say was that we are all in the same boat. That was the message we wanted to get across. And yes, it's confusing. And yes, it's a model that we think that it's going the best way going forward. it resonates with our feelings, what we are going through. And we're all feeling, quite unsure, quite anxious. We think things are not okay. And the message that we're trying to give here today is that it is okay to feel not okay, that it is the world, all the institutions of the world, all countries of the world, all individuals all over like us are in a flux. The normal is no more the normal, and we are all trying to find our way. So we have, a session that will talk about how to ground ourselves when there's so much uncertainty around. But these are strange times, and we are all going to rise up to the occasion as we have done before. As you know, this has pedagogy is now called panic-gogy, that you are in a state of panic. And they're talking about the students not doing well in school these past semesters as coronavirus casualties. And they're talking of how there have been certain learning losses in students as, a COVID slide that you will have to deal with as we move on. So I'm just going to run through what we did yesterday, and it's just a recap. And in that overview, I'm going to talk about what is so different again. And though it was very clearly explained, we have now 3 categories of students that we are going to deal with on the campus. Just to say that first it was 2 in spring, and even before that, I would say that in traditional teaching, when you were doing in-person teaching, you always had asynchronous tasks for your students. So you were actually teaching 2 categories of students throughout in your career. In spring and summer, the in-person shifted to online. And that was a new skill for you to learn that you learned in a hurry. So here we go. I'm trying to just clear my screen. So what we have is synchronous, online, and asynchronous students as a category that was always there. And now we come, and what you were doing, I have just a small model showing that there's a synchronous and in-person, online, and asynchronous, online or offline. And what you were generally doing in person or online when you moved online was that you were giving your students some home tasks to bring that for discussion to the class. So students prepared their content, they brought it to class, you discussed, you modeled, you presented, you elaborated on their difficulties and gaps in their learning, and then you send them back to do group work or discussions or projects so that they could work on the application of the content that they had learned. And perhaps there's that assessment built in with that discussion and the assignment they were supposed to do. And this is known as flipped learning. And this, you as good teachers all over the world have been doing it, irrespective of the in-person mode or the online mode. So now what happens is that we add another we get the in-person class back. We get it back. So now you're dealing with in-person, online, and asynchronous. And you have done them all. So you have done in person, you have done the synchronous online, we're still learning, we'll keep on learning. And you have always been doing asynchronous also. But what is the catch? The catch is that you have now to simultaneously teach synchronous, in-person, and online. But you have to also teach asynchronous, that they do not lose out on the learning outcomes that you so want of them to do. Just to give you some data of how you have used asynchronous mode, Moodle has been around on the campus since 2014. Very few of you used it. I think not more than 100 before spring. And then suddenly when spring came, out of 300 faculty at that time, data given by ITS, some 270 of you used your Moodle accounts. And that you did for a very basic activity. You used it for placing content on your account, to share content. Only 126 of you actually were adventurous enough to use it for quiz, and only 49 of you used it for Big Blue Button. And just to recap again, because again, I have got lots of questions today about the Big Blue Button. Big Blue Button was a very effective integration, but somehow it could not take the load of too many students when they came onto it, and the bandwidth didn't survive. So Big Blue Button, I'm very sorry to say that despite its great pluses, we will not be able to use it on campus anymore. And yes, there was another question, that is MS Teams compulsory? And just to assuage your worries about that, nothing is compulsory in any way. Compulsory is getting the learning outcomes you want to happen. That's it. How you do it, what you're comfortable with, please use the tools, the platforms, whatever you feel comfortable with, as long as you ensure that your students do not have a loss in learning. And that is the tough call. And that is what we are trying to do in these past two, yesterday and today, is to trying to understand a few new skills that could make it easier to navigate through these three different types of modes of categories of students. Now, there are different approaches for doing simultaneous teaching. I thought was a newer now challenge for all of us. So I started looking at what would it mean for simultaneous teaching? And there are quite a few approaches, but when we came on first, I saw Ryan Brasher in the window. Ryan Brasher, I remember when the vice rector announced the new model, he actually immediately wrote back an email with a long list of possibilities that could happen. And with each, he had some pros and cons. So Ryan, I see that you are sleepless, not in Seattle, but in Canada. So could you please, Suleiman, unmute him? And I would like Ryan to sort of elaborate on the approaches he talked towards a blended model and what he thought about each. I think you did a very good recap. Ryan, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Roxana. I have to admit that I was initially skeptical of combining the logic of in-class instruction with that of online instruction. But since FCC students want in-person instruction, well, most of them, some of them are introverts who were, I think, in online heaven last spring. But most of them want in-class instruction, and I think there's opportunities with that as well. So essentially, there are two approaches to synchronous online teaching, simultaneous synchronous online teaching. And Dr. Roxana has just given me the task of giving a short introduction to them. Now, giving presentations or short lectures, you would do the same for both approaches. But essentially, the first approach is the simulating the in-person experience with the in-class, with the online students. So you would try to do the same for both. So for example, you would have in-class discussion while also having chat sessions online where the students can chime in. It would require, I think, an extra student to monitor that because the professor is not able to do both at the same time. You could, when you have small group discussions in your class, you can also have breakout sessions online like we did yesterday. Zoom does it automatically. With Microsoft Teams, I've been checking into it today, you can actually have breakout sessions and you can roam the breakout session as a faculty member. You can go from one to the next, much like you would in a classroom. If you have in-class individual reflection time, you can do the same with the online students. For my own example, in my Introduction to Political Science course, I have students discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the democratic system versus government of technocrats and experts. So I generally have them break up into small groups to make sure that everyone gets involved and has confidence to discuss the arguments. Now, this could be done online and in person at the same time. Now, the second approach is so what we talked about yesterday, going for equity rather than equality, seeking to achieve learning goals without necessarily insisting on the same methods simultaneously for the online students and the in-class students. Now, there's some advantages that each of them have, and this method would speak to the advantages of both. So, for instance, you could appoint online discussion leaders for each day to present materials that they've worked on related to class material. You probably want to check in with them beforehand to see what they've got, but they can do it more effectively because they don't have to wear a mask, unlike you or the other in-class students. You could also have online students engage in online searches while the in-class students are doing small group discussions or other activities. You could also have online students give reflective summaries at the beginning or at the end of the class. That allows them to get involved in ways that they can't during class, and also speaks to the advantages of the online experience. So going back to my example, so instead of having all the students engage in small group discussions, particularly with the internet connectivity and the bandwidth problem, which I think we're also experiencing today, I might direct a few of them to a couple of databases, the online students, to a couple of databases to see whether economic wealth is in any way related to regime type. Are democracies wealthier than non-democracies? So I'll give that task to the online students. And after the in-class students have completed their small group debates, I'll have the online students chime in with the results that they found from perusing these databases. And that can bring new information to the class. And so according to smarter people than myself, they would say that large classes will make simulating the class experience necessary. So you'd have to use that first approach where you use the same kind of methods for the online and the in-class students. But if you have very much activity-based classes and smaller classes, then you might tend towards the second approach where you use different methods for both groups. I hope that was a fair summary of the two approaches.
Absolutely. You but remember, you also at that time wrote, Ryan, about a couple of other permutations within these approaches. And I thought that were very interesting, that you thought of so many possibilities of approaching the model, but essentially they boil down to these two. I agree. So yes, thank you so much, Ryan. You got them all. So the two approaches are if you do identical tasks for two classes or you do different tasks, but you have to integrate the tasks. Like I said, the catch is that you are talking to the same learning objectives for the students. And then, of course, the question that Ryan also answered is like, what approach is good for me? So if there are the two things that you have to consider, there will be some disciplines like science, computer science, when you're doing hardcore content and want it across to students, there's no way you are not repeating it, doing the same for both. But where there is, like Ryan said, an activity-based content that you could have them do discussions, group work, projects, or assignments. So then you can break them up according to the best modality for each. And our experts have done that yesterday, shown you how different modalities will work with different categories of student. But there are some more on the way today, so I will not take up much time talking about that. So, and it also depends, of course, on class size. It's always better to have an equal class size. And I double checked with our admin department, and they said that probably it will be a fair amount of, you will have an equal number of online and in-person students. So very quickly, I want to sort of go through these some worksheets that will be very meaningful for you when you start planning your course and start thinking about how you're going to apply those new, the strategies that you're thinking about. So let me share as they open. What you see is the worksheet that Maida and Mahabali both used. I have modified it from Brian Beatty. If you go to the guidebook that was distributed to, email to all of you, it has this table, and you can look up the actual one as well. He has done amazing work for blended teaching, and he has great models. What you will really need to work on, and a lot of you have done that when we do DFINCS training with you on course designing, that we talk about how to lay out very good student learning outcomes. How do we go around doing assessments? Remember, we've always said that assessments will be tied to learning objectives, and that is the first thing you connect, and the activity will fall after. And then, of course, once you do the activity and assessment planning, you will be thinking about the resources and the tools. Both of these things will come in handy over here. And in our guidebook, we have given you a small set of open educational resources that Maha was talking about yesterday. And we also have a very small 12 2 pages of tools, technology tools that you can use. I will now go on to the other slide, which I want to talk about. And it's a very important document. It's your syllabus planning document. And as you know that the syllabus planning document, I'm sorry, I have lost the screen. The syllabus planning document is something that we haven't used so far. I'm sorry. Can you see the syllabus template on the screen? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let me see. I did share. So. New share. And here we go, is the syllabus template and share. There. Do you see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. As you see, this template is now on all your Moodle accounts. It's right there. It's pretty exhaustive, but we have tried to make it in keeping with the HEC and FCC policies. And please feel free to not use things that you think are not required, but this will give you a starting point to how to communicate the course you are doing with your students. Students need to get a message, and they need to be very clear about how you're going to conduct their course. And this communication becomes more important, as you know, in an online and an asynchronous mode, because you are not there in person to clarify a lot of stuff. So once you have done the worksheets and planned out for different learning objectives, your assessments for the 3 categories and your activities, you have listed up the resources, you do all the hard work over there, then you have actually writing down some of the basic things that you always do. There's nothing new. I've just put them together. If you go through it, this is the program objectives, they're optional learning outcomes, or that is key. Some people call it learning objectives, but we prefer if you say by the end of the course, the student learner will be able to, is it knowledge or is higher cognitive thinking skills? And here we have given the worksheet, the guide, as you can see, the open educational free resources and technology resources for your use. And we have even given some of the synchronous best things that work synchronously in a teaching learning task, just as a model to make your job easy. And for assessment, we also give you a possibility of how to make rubrics and a small brief talking about how to conduct your assessments. And then, of course, there is out-of-class study required for all 3 categories, their textbooks and materials, the course requirements, and here then you are talking about the breakup that you will do for different activities and how you're going to grade them. Probably you have know by now that in online learning, formative assessment becomes very, very important. That doesn't have to be graded, but you give them responses to their work, and here's the grading legend. And of course, here are some of the student support policies that they will need to work with and some extra documents. So I will take you now to the third worksheet. Lots of you have just complained about using Zoom and how it limits you for the, for the time, that you need to do your classes. You want a 50-minute class, okay? And like I said yesterday, if you can see this worksheet, it talks about how to create a synchronous class, and I have tried to break down in modular activities for your class in such a manner that you're done in 40 minutes. For those of you, and I got lots of messages today on my phone saying, we want to keep to Zoom, we are more comfortable to Zoom. And the impression was that perhaps we are insisting on MS Teams. No, we are not. So just to make that clear again and again, what I have tried to do is that student learning outcomes, again, the evidence of learning, and I have put up a list of some of the most common things that you will be using. But then I have just stacked up 5-minute synchronous session, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and then an asynchronous mode that all do as in learning or a recap activity to revisit their learning and to find out if there are any gaps. So this sort of model will work very well with all of you who want to keep to Zoom. Nevertheless, best practices show that when you move online, the best way to do it is actually work with, chunks of materials and chunks of sessions rather than, doing one whole long session.